In the cold corridors of power and luxury, a billionaire CEO is at his wit's end. His young daughter refuses to eat anything anyone cooks. But when a quiet, humble girl from a modest background enters their mansion as a temporary help, everything changes. Her food is the only thing the child accepts. What secret lies behind her cooking? And why does the CEO find himself falling for more than just her recipes? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I still remember the first time I walked through those enormous gates of the Westwood estate. Everything about that place screamed wealthy. White marble fountains, the acres of manicured lawns, the way silence echoed in the vastness of the mansion. I was nobody, a 25-year-old culinary school dropout who had just lost her job at a downtown diner. But Mrs. Clark, the housekeeper, had called me for a trial day, needing someone to assist the chef. Don't expect to stay long, she had warned. Mr. Hawthorne's daughter, Leela, doesn't eat. Not from us, not from anyone. I hadn't expected much. Just a day's work, maybe a few dollars to keep the electricity running at my apartment for another week. But fate doesn't always knock. Sometimes it barges in, wearing an apron. Lila was 6 years old, pale, tiny, and heartbreakingly quiet. Her mother had passed away from cancer a year ago, I was told in hushed voices. Since then, she'd been refusing food like it was poison. Nutritionists had come and gone. Michelin star chefs had cooked their masterpieces to no avail. That morning, I made a simple chicken soup, nothing fancy. Just like my mother used to make when I was sick. As a child, boiled chicken, hand-cut carrots, celery, garlic, a hint of rosemary. Comfort in a bowl. Lila stared at it. I didn't speak. I just placed the tray down and left the room. When I came back 20 minutes later, the bowl was empty. Everything changed after that. Who cooked this? The voice was cold, clipped, and commanding. I turned to find Mr. Hawthorne himself standing in the kitchen doorway. He was taller than I'd imagined, with storm gray eyes and a constant furrow on his brow. It was me, sir, I said, wiping my hands on my apron. He stared at me like I was a puzzle. She ate it all. Yes, sir. Cook it again tonight. And so I did. Night after night, I was called upon to prepare Leela's meals. Simple things, grilled cheese sandwiches, oatmeal with honey, mashed potatoes, nothing gourmet. But she ate it all, eventually. She asked my name. I'm Clara, I said, my voice soft. Clara, she repeated, like she was tasting it. That was the first time she smiled. Days turned into weeks. I wasn't officially hired, but they didn't send me away. The other staff began treating me differently. Mrs. Clark started giving me more kitchen responsibilities. Lila began waiting for me by the dining table. And Mr. Hawthorne, he started showing up during meal time. At first he said nothing, just observed. Then, small talk. Where did you learn to cook like that? My mom, I answered. She passed away too. His expression softened. It was the first crack I saw in his otherwise impenetrable demeanor. One night Lila fell asleep in my arms after dinner. Her small hand wrapped around my apron. Mr. Hawthorne was watching from the doorway. She hasn't let anyone that close in. Months, he murmured. Neither of us spoke for a long time. It wasn't just about food anymore. I began telling Leela bedtime stories. She'd ask me to braid her hair. On weekends we baked cookies together. She'd giggle when flour dusted my nose. And somewhere in those quiet moments, I started seeing the man behind the CEO. He was tired, not in the way that sleep could fix, but soul-weary. He worked too much, smiled too little. But when he looked at Lila or at me, his eyes softened. We weren't a family, not yet. But the house no longer felt cold. Then came the accident. One rainy evening, I was on my way to the farmer's market to pick up fresh herbs, when a car hit me at the corner of 5th and Maple. I woke up in a hospital bed with a concussion and a fractured wrist. When I opened my eyes, he was there, Mr. Hawthorne. His suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his eyes, they were red. You scared us, he whispered. Is Leela? She's been crying all night. She hasn't eaten, not without you. A tear rolled down my cheek. He reached for my hand gently. Don't do that again. I can't lose you. In that sterile hospital room, something shifted. He brought me back to the mansion himself, arranged for in-house care, sat by my bedside every night, reading reports while I slept that one night. I asked, "Why are you doing this?" He looked up, silent for a moment. Then he whispered, "Because the day you walked into my house, everything started tasting like life again." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, but my heart raced when I was well enough to walk. He invited me to the garden. It was spring. The cherry blossoms were blooming. "Clara," he said, taking a deep breath, "I know this is unorthodox, maybe even crazy, but you've brought something into our lives that no money ever could." I turned to him. "You've given Leela her childhood back. You've given me hope." He dropped to one knee. "Marry me. Not because I'm rich, not because you work here, but because you've become the soul of this home." Tears blurred my vision. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes." The wedding was small. Just us, Leela, and a few close friends. She was the flower girl, twirling in a white dress. I cooked the wedding dinner myself, chicken soup, just like the first day. As we sat at the table, Lila leaned against me and whispered, "Now it really feels like home." "Mr. Hawthorne." No. Alexander kissed my forehead and smiled. For once, his eyes held no storm. But even after marriage, reality was not always simple. I was now the wife of one of the most powerful men in New York. My clothes changed. My address changed. But inside I was still the same Clara who knew how to make soup the way her mother taught her. There were tabloids, headlines, CEO marries help, Clara the cook, a Cinderella tale or calculated move. I tried to ignore them. But at night I'd sit on the balcony and wonder if I belonged in this world. Alexander noticed. "You're not alone anymore, Clara," he whispered one night, wrapping his arms around me. "And you don't have to prove anything to anyone, not to them, not to me." "But sometimes I feel like a guest in my own life," I admitted. "Then let's build a new one," he said. Together, and we did. Months later, I started a small cooking school for underprivileged children. I named it Rosemary and Hope in honor of my mother and Lila's mother. Lila would often visit the classes, helping younger kids decorate cupcakes. She had changed. She laughed freely. She hugged often. She started calling me Mom. And every time she did, my heart cracked open with joy. There was one afternoon, though, that will forever stay with me. We were in the kitchen, all three of us. Alexander was helping Leela shape meatballs, flour on his expensive sleeves, laughter lighting up his face. I was stirring tomato sauce when Leela looked at me and asked, "Mom, do you think my real mom would have liked your soup?" I paused, looked at her. "I think," I said carefully, wiping my hands, "she would have loved it, but I think she would have loved you most of all." She hugged me tightly. "I'm glad I have two moms," she whispered. Tears burned in my eyes. Alexander wrapped his arms around us both, and in that warm embrace, I knew we weren't just surviving. We were healing. They say love comes in unexpected ways. Sometimes it arrives in silence, sometimes in a bowl of warm soup, and sometimes in the soft laughter of a child who finally feels safe. But most of all, it comes when you stop running from your past and begin cooking with your heart.